Yeah, so good morning, friends. Let's start with our market commentary. Now, what we see in front of us is basically Nifty weekly chart. Now, what we have seen from the tops, wherever the gap was formed, so the biggest gap was around 10,760 mark or 750, and the second gap was around 10,650. This was on the downside, the gap, followed by continuous resistance because it could not go above this level, and the fall came by. Now, after the fall, what we saw, a base formation taking place, and then the same amount of fall was totally recovered. Okay. Apart from that, something striking and different which happened over here, it tried to fill the gap. So these three candles, if you try to see what has happened over here, 1, 2, and 3, was able to fill this entire gap which was formed, right? So the gap which was formed by falling down, so gap down and then resistance going down, it recovered all the losses which it had made. Okay, so after the recovery, it also filled the gap. So that was most of the important point to consider, that it tried to fill the gap and was able to reach to the higher standards. Now on the top, we already know 10,000, 11,100 and 11,200 is the all-time high. But what we see is that this particular point where it went and it basically came down from yesterday and today. So let us go inside the day to understand what exactly happened. But for the week, what I'm trying to see, on the top yesterday it was around 10,930. It came down and it is right now around 10,700. Now even if the selling persists on the weekly chart, what we can see, it tries to go and it can reach in the zone of 10,650. So 10,650 to 10,620 is the range where you can see the gap was filled, right? So this gap which is there over here was basically filled by 1, 2, and 3 candles. So if the selling comes or persists, it will basically find stoppage at this particular point around 10,650 mark. So it cannot just keep going down and reach to 10,000 once again, but first halt will be around this 10,600 to 10,650 mark. So on the weekly format, yes, it is looking weak. Continuous selling is coming by, okay, and it can basically reach towards 10,650 to 10,600 zone. So that is our weekly takeaway, what we are trying to see on the weekly chart. Now let's go inside the day and see if we can find any other new kind of support for Nifty on the downside. So on the weekly format, 10,650 to 10,600 seems to be a good support going forward. Now when I go down and see on the daily chart, so something which is unique in the daily chart, first thing which we see, 10,937, which was yesterday's high, which was made over here, was basically the previous gap zone, right? So there was a gap down over here as well, and after this gap, if you see, it almost reached to the gap and then the selling came by, right? So first point to understand, okay, the gap was there and basically it stopped almost at that gap level. Second point, what we see over here, the same thing, there was a gap around this 10,750 to 650. It remained sideways, continuous resistance, and the fall came by. There was a steep recovery after 10,000 mark was reached towards these levels, and what I see on the daily format, the same thing has happened. It filled the gap, right, and then after filling the gap, again the selling took place, and then again it started going higher. So ideally, if you see, the first bounce happened over here, came back down, and the second bounce happened over here. So almost again 10,600 and 10,650 mark, which we were trying to see from the weekly format, also seems to be relevant. So when I go on the daily format and I'm trying to see, the same level seems to be eminent, or I can say important, even on the daily structure. Now on the daily format, so these candles are daily. When I see over here, today it opens gap down, and after gap down, a continuous selling is seen. Now if the selling is seen, where can it stop? So from the weekly front, we are clear that 10,650 mark or 10,600 is the range where it will stop. But apart from that, if I go down and see on the daily format, it is almost at these levels where it can stop, 10,700, because this was the first base which was formed over here. right? And then it started going up. So here it can stop, and then the second stop would be around 10,650. But this is just a small stop. If this is taken out, I can say on the weekly and on the daily format, the stop of 10,650 to 10,600 is still relevant. So what I see from daily and weekly format, one thing is pretty much clear. If Nifty keeps going down, it will find good support in this range of 10,600 to 650 mark. Second most important thing, one which we need to understand, can you see more downside in Nifty? Yes, it can. It is possible only if this bridge is crossed. So if 10,600 is taken out, there is an easy fall happening towards 10,400 mark. Okay, so on the daily front, we are trying to understand one more process where if the bigger resistance or bigger support is taken out, we can basically see it can reach towards 10,400. So two things which are takeaway from the daily chart. 10,600 to 650 is the range where it will stop for some time, and if it opens gap down below 10,600, as we see over here, it can reach towards 10,400 mark, right? So there will be a free fall after 10,600 to 10,400. Now try to understand, we are yet lots of days are left for the expiry. Okay, this is the longest month of the expiry. There are 5 weeks. So if I see over here, this week gets over, even after that there is 1.5 weeks to go. Almost 2 weeks are remaining for this entire expiry. So things cannot be ruled out, as 5 weeks are most volatile months. What I see over here, once this is taken out, let's see whether 10,600 is breached or not. And if it is breached, you can see straight away towards 10,400 mark, right? So that is a good takeaway from the daily chart. Now let's go to Bank Nifty and try to understand the same, whether it is trying to provide support or it can also become a weak link for Nifty. Now what I see on the weekly front, again for Bank Nifty, two important points. The top was around this 27,500, but what I see over here, there was a gap which was formed around this zone, right? So the zone where the gap was formed is around 26,500 mark, where the gap down took place, and then it went almost all the way down towards 23,500. So the fall was steep, same as in Nifty, but most important is after this fall or gap down, it basically had good amount of resistance around this 25,800, and then the fall came by and the continuous rise came by towards the range of 25,800. Now what happened with the next weekly candle, as we see, it was a continuous rise and it filled almost the gap, right? So now there is a difference in Nifty and Bank Nifty. If you see Bank Nifty in 1 week itself, it filled the gap. Nifty took 3 weeks to fill the gap. It was 3 small candles which filled the gap. Okay. Now here it basically went and it filled the gap. This basically showed there was kind of resistance. It tried to go up yesterday and then it was pulled down. So what I see on the weekly front, Bank Nifty seems weak, but the base support will come around this range where the complete rise had taken place. So it will keep going down, but normally around this zone of 25,800 or 25,700 is the major kind of support for Bank Nifty, right? So that is why this is the biggest support, because this was the complete green Moribazu candle which was formed and it also filled the gap. So what we now need to understand, yes, on the weekly front it seems weak. For this entire week it can reach to 25,700, 25,800. That is roughly around 500 points, 400 points from these levels, right? So if it goes down by 400 points on these levels, the only point is if this point is taken out, 25,700, you can see further downside in Bank Nifty, right? So we need to wait and watch whether this level gets taken out or not, right? That is the takeaway from the weekly front. Now let's go inside and see the daily chart. When I see on the daily chart, the same thing seems to be relevant. As I saw, there was a gap down and then continuous resistance was in this zone. Okay, here it came back up and then it shooted up and tried to fill the entire gap, right? After the gap was filled, what we saw yesterday, it went up. Today it is opening gap down and it can keep going down towards this zone. So again, what I see over here, it was small candles which went up, okay, and then a complete pullback can be seen by today itself. So today itself, it can reach to 25,900. This is the gap which was there prior itself, 25,800 to 25,900 zone. So more 200 points to go on the daily front. Basically, for the entire day, it can come down towards these levels of 26,000. So the first level, if I try to understand on the daily front, is around 26,000. Okay, and the second point which we need to understand, will this gap gets filled or not? So 25,800 and this is 26,000. So this is the range where it will go and settle. This is on the weekly, daily front, and once it settles over here, we need to go and see whether the higher resistance or higher support can be breached or not. So Bank Nifty is weak, agreed. It can keep going down. Only now 200 points are left for the day, and it will go and stop in this gap zone. Okay, so Bank Nifty will have a halt in this particular gap zone of 2600 and 25,800. But try to understand if the gap gets filled and if it breaches the important level of 25,700, which is the weekly level, then you can see good downside in Bank Nifty. Now, where is the another downside in Bank Nifty? Obviously, this is the first zone, 25,400, and then the second zone is almost around the range of 25,000. So what I see in the next 15 days, it is not surprising that if Bank Nifty crosses the important milestone 25,700 on the downside, you can see straight away towards 25,000 mark, right? A good selling can be seen because this was a certain rise by small candles, not by heavy duty candles. So small candle rise will always bring faster falls. Okay, what we need to understand on the weekly front, 25,700 is the good support line, and if that gets breached, you can look for 25,000 on the downside. So these are two takeaways from daily and weekly format for Bank Nifty. Now what I see, today it opened gap down. Obviously everyone will be on the losing side. So let's go and see who is the gainer and loser for the day. So what I see over here, even ICICI Bank seems to be the first top loser. Right, so this stock basically went up even after the bad results, are now basically getting hammered. SBI is again down, PNB results were bad, GAIL is down, Hero Moto is down, Cipla is down. So majorly these are the 5 stocks which are down. The gainers, even in spite of down, if you go and see it, is Lupin, Tech Mahindra, Wipro and TCX. Now all I see over here is just the IT pack. Why IT pack? Because USD INR is making new high. Okay, so if USD INR is making new high, it basically provides support to all the IT pack, and all I can see over here, Tech Mahindra, Wipro, TCS, all are the stocks which are on the IT front. So there are small gains which we can see. Even after a good gap down, the IT pack is showing some kind of resilience. What I see on the losing side, the major loser, the most important is ICICI Bank. Right? So if ICICI Bank is on the downside, it basically gives a lot of downside for Bank Nifty as well. So ICICI Bank is down. More than that, you have again Ultratech, which is on the cement side. You have HPCL on the commodity, BPCL. All those other stocks are also on the downside. Since crude is making new high, so HP, BP, and IOC are also making new low. Right? So all those stocks are also in the list. So basically, what I see on the losing side, it's basically the commodity stocks, one of the bank, which is ICICI Bank, and then the Hero MotoCorp. Right, so 2, 3 are basically different segments where the markets are pushing itself down. Now let's take some of the heavyweights and try to understand what is happening on each of these fronts. Now let's take first Reliance. So what I see on the Reliance on the daily side, if I try to understand, this was the top which was made, came back down. It basically came high again almost to the same top, came down again, tried to reach to the same high. And now we see good selling taking place in last 3 days. So today selling, apart from that, even last 2 days, there was good amount of red candles. Now on the top, it is not able to sustain. It is trying to pull itself down. The most important point one has to consider on the daily chart of Reliance, here was the level where the gap up took place. Okay, and it basically zoomed up. It is now trying to give away all the gains. If 960 gets taken out, try to understand, if 960 gets taken out, there is a free fall in Reliance to 940. Why free fall? Because the rise was faster, the fall will be also faster. So what I see on Reliance, there is something which is not good on the charts. So Reliance can have a good downside even after 3 red candles if this level of 760 is taken out. So 760, once the mark is breached, you can see straight away down towards 940. So Reliance looks weak on the card. It can find some support around 960, but once that is out, you can see straight away going towards 940 or so. So Reliance weak. Let's go and see ITC. So ITC has been strong for this particular season. If you can see from 260, it went down went up almost towards 287 mark. Now what I see over here, after a red candle which was formed, the good support range came around this zone. So it is not able to go below 277 mark. But what I see over here today, gap down, even it is trying to reach higher. But agenda is pretty much clear. If this level is not breached, 277, you cannot see ITC going down, right? So ITC important level to watch out is again 277. But what I see in the last few candle, it was trying to reach high, could not breach the upper level of Moribazu on the higher side, and you can basically see some pressure in ITC as well. So ITC also a candidate where it can come towards 277, 278 mark, but this level is breached. Again, try to understand there is a free fall which can happen towards 273 or so. Why 273 or so? Again, the reason is same. The rise was faster, went down, again the rise was fast. Now the selling can persist only after 277. So if 277 is breached, 273 towards 270. So almost 2% fall can take place in ITC. So 4% fall in ITC can bring Nifty quite a bit low, because this is one of the heavyweight in ITC as well, right? So ITC is down. Now Maruti has not been showing strength through and through. What I see, Maruti after the top which was made around this 9,300, there has been continuous selling on the downside. Now Maruti cannot provide much amount of pressure, because now if you see on Maruti, it's almost in the range where the support starts coming in. So Maruti has already had good amount of beating. If I say from the top, it has been going down. Now this was the point where continuous support has taken place for Maruti. So 8,600 is a good level to watch out for Maruti. Max is towards 8,400. So Maruti does not remain weak. It's already corrected enough. So we cannot see another round of selling coming in Maruti. So it might sustain on the sideways. So ITC Reliance seems to be weak and Maruti is almost corrected. Let's take L&T. L&T, again, the reason was same. It had gone up so much, tried to fill the gap, and this is the point where the selling took place. So this was the gap which was filled and the selling took place. The important point on L&T, this is the range where L&T has provided a lot of support. So 1350 is the point. Even if you see the last rally took place from 1350, continuous support comes in around 1350, and now it is trying to reach to this level. Now L&T can only be weak after this 1350 level. So if 1350 gets breached, then only you can see a downside happening towards 1300 or so, right? So the important point is it is moving towards the support like Maruti, and there is no big downside. But if 1350 is breached, then 1300 is on the cards, right? So that's L&T. The IT pack seems to be strong. So our TCS and Infosys, one of the heavyweights of Nifty. What I see on TCS, there is no round of selling. TCS has maintained the top and it is now rising almost towards the higher levels. Now, why is it that TCS is not giving away the gains? As I said, USD INR is making new high, right? So depreciation is good for pharma and IT pack. That is why if you see the TCS or the IT packs are on the gainer list. So TCS does not seem to be weak, okay? And we cannot basically look for TCS being weak if the USD INR provides support to IT. Even on the Infosys, one of the heavyweights, it is still on the top. Even after small fall or hiccups, it is have taken U-turn from every levels. So if I see TCS, if I see Infosys, both are at 52-week high levels, right? On the higher levels, both TCS and Infosys are around those higher levels. But we see that Reliance and ITC can provide good downside with L&T. Maruti again on the sideways. Now let's take some of the banks. So HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank. When I see HDFC Bank, it has been rising higher. So if you see, actually it is making new lifetime high. So there has been a fresh round of buying taking place in HDFC Bank by FIIs as well. Now what I see over here, after the good gap up over here, it basically shooted up. Now we are not seeing any kind of selling in HDFC Bank, right? So HDFC Bank can come down. It might reach to some kind of retracement, but there is no big selling on HDFC Bank. So HDFC Bank seems to be strong through and through. Now let's see ICICI Bank on the other hand. Something which was very important, as we had discussed prior in our commentary as well, ICICI Bank was only weak if it would have crossed below 277. And if you see two round of selling and it did not cross prior to the result, it started moving up. So this was the time when the selling took place, but it did not go below 277. It went up almost to 289, and this gap which we see over here was formed because of the result. So it opened the gap up and it pushed itself higher. Now try to understand, the results were not good. Still then you see a gap up and it went higher. What I see now, when it went higher, on the higher side, this was the gap which was formed, right? So if I just make a line at the gap level, I see a strong resistance coming in that zone. So it went out towards 315. Already every day it was trying to reach towards 314, 315, but could not go above this, right? So the gap was not filled like in Nifty and Bank Nifty. It was making a huge resistance at 1315, 1360. What I see over here, after 4 or 5 days, today it opens gap down. Now this gap down basically shows it is opened gap down below all the downside which you can see. So all the lows of this candle, if you see over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the lows, and it opens straight away gap down. So there is a complete sell pressure on ICICI Bank. So this was a consolidated candles which were formed, and then it opened gap down. Gap down and selling taking place. This basically shows the gap which was formed on the result day. After the result, it can be filled. So if I see the gap that can be filled almost towards 294 levels, first it can reach towards these levels. Even after 3% fall, if I see 298 towards 294, right? So that is almost 4 rupees, which is roughly around 1.5%. More downside is left in ICICI Bank. Now try to understand two striking difference. ICICI Bank remains weak and HDFC Bank remains strong, right? So this is what you need to understand. Even after the bad results, it went up, but then it gives away the gains and it starts going down. Now important point for ICICI again remains the top, which is 293, because here if you see, continuous resistance was made around this 293 zone, right? So it will come over here and it will provide some kind of support. So more 1%, 1.5%, 2% downside can be seen on ICICI Bank, right? So that should be kept on our radar. ICICI remains to be weak. Talking about Axis Bank, the same thing had happened with Axis as well. The results were not that great, and what we saw over here, there was a continuous selling which took place prior to the result. Then it opened down and then 10% move happened all the way. After that, if you see, it still went higher and made new high, right? So what I see on Axis Bank, but if you see on the higher level, it has never breached the higher levels of 565, and then you have the second level of 550 or so. So it never went above 550, and this was the point when it was trying to reach above 550 towards 565 levels. But was it able to go high? No. And then was large amount of Moribazu which was formed at these levels. There was resistance at these levels of 550, and what I see today, it is now trying to open gap down. Again, like ICICI, if you try to see, these are the candles and it opens gap down below all these candles low, right? So Axis Bank can also see a downside, but the downside might be limited to some extent towards 536. So Axis Bank will remain weak. It now cannot form good upside, is not possible on Axis Bank. So ICICI weak, Axis Bank weak. At least 3% fall is quite possible on Axis as well as ICICI Bank. Going out to Kotak Bank, IndusInd Bank, which has been making new highs. What we see on Kotak Bank, there is no stopping, right? So what I see on Kotak Bank, after the huge resistance was taken out, it zoomed higher again with gap up, it again went higher. So Kotak Bank seems to be a strong candidate from private sector banks. IndusInd Bank has been the same. On the IndusInd factor also, if you try to see, it has been going from the bottom at 1600, which was made after the budget. The fall happened, went higher, went up, came back down. Again, it is trying to inch higher. So what I see on Kotak Bank, IndusInd Bank, all are on the top, making new 52-week high. Let's talk about Yes Bank. So when I see Yes Bank, the same thing had happened. If you see out here, it has been the top of Yes Bank around this 271 levels. 370 levels were the top, and the second time it went towards 367 levels. Now what happened over here, it came back down, corrected enough, then it had went up towards these 367 levels. Now what happened around this zone, the selling took place, but what I see over here, it has not given away all the gains which was made. Now this was the result day when it shooted higher towards this 367 mark. So what I see on the bank side, HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, IndusInd Bank, Yes Bank, all are strong. Axis and ICICI are the only banks which are trying to pull Bank Nifty down, right? Not to talk about SBI and all the PSU banks are already facing a lot of pressure. So yesterday PNB results were very bad, and what I see on SBI, even after a small gain which was seen in SBI, the gain has been given out. Apart from that, if you see again what has happened, like ICICI, there was continuous candles. All the lows were over here in this zone, which was around this 246 zone. And today what happens on SBI, it opens straight away, gap down, right, below all the lows. So whenever a candidate opens below all the lows, there will be continuous selling for that particular day, right? So that can be one of the setups which you can focus on the consolidation side. So that one should be understood. SBI was weak and it opened gap down, it is going down. And you also have ICICI and Axis which are trying to put pressure. So pretty much what I see over here, some candidates are providing good support to Nifty. So if you see the good banking stocks, so HDFC Bank and all those Kotak, KS are providing support. That is why I'm trying to say the downside for Bank Nifty might be first at towards 26,000. It cannot go breach 25,700 is only possible if HDFC Bank, all the strong candidates starts giving away the game, right? So Bank Nifty cannot be seen a larger downside for Bank Nifty. The first stoppage will come around 26,000, right? So keeping that in mind, the gap is there around 26,000 to 25,800. So more, only 300 points downside can be seen on Bank Nifty. Not more, because the higher heavyweight stocks, HDFC, Yes Bank, Kotak, all are providing good amount of support. When I see on Nifty, as we speak about Nifty on the downside, we have already put a level of 10,650. So even if the selling comes in, it has to cross 10,650, because this is where it will get support in this range of 10,600 to 650. So there is only 50-60 points away for Nifty on the downside if you try to see. And after that, if it goes below these levels, then only further downside is possible. Otherwise, you cannot see more downside for Nifty. So what I see on the broader phase, Nifty having levels of 10,600 and Bank Nifty having levels of 26,000. Right? So these are the levels for the day, and we'll connect again tomorrow to understand how things pan out. Thank you for joining in.